Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the MVP. I'm your co-host, Andrew,
And I'm the other co-host, Randy.
and we had a great time last time, didn't we, Randy, in the first
Yes.
one? And we're going to continue with the tradition because, as we know, beer is manufactured.
Oh,
And
yes.
so we're going to have, and because we passivate stainless steel here in our shop, I just caught my eyes called Steel Reserve, made by the Steel Brewing Company. So we're gonna crack that open. And while we're pouring this, let me tell you folks a little bit about our format. What we do is a 30-minute podcast talking about the future cutting edge of manufacturing. The first half is 15 minutes. We talk about two topics that we saw that we feel are on the leading edge. And then the second half of the program, we interview someone that is involved in that cutting edge, that leading edge of manufacturing. So while we'll let this settle down a little bit, we'll get into the very first topic. What we're going to talk about is 3D manufacturing, but specifically has to do with food manufacturing using 3D printers. I was watching the news the other day. I think it was Tuesday. There was some climate activists that were saying that maybe we should start snake farming and reduce the O2 emissions by cattle by helping the environment. And I'm not a big fan of.
Are we talking methane to?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So they were talking about snake farming could help with that. And I've had snake before. I've had rattlesnake. It does taste like chicken. I will admit that. But I just don't see a lot of snake farmers cropping up everywhere.
I do not see it.
But I like the idea of food 3D printing. I like the idea of actually being able to produce food and out of plants, and you're 3D printing it. So there's a company. There's an article written by Megan Ruggles from manufacturing.com, and they wrote about a company called Revo Foods. They printed 3D salmon fillets, and I saw this and I go, man, it looks just like salmon fillets. I mean, it looked identical, and it was just fascinating. And it's all plant based, and it kind of reminded me of Star Trek: The Replicator.
Yes,
and there was especially this one episode from the very original Star Trek in the '60s, where they had gone back in time and they had ended, kidnapping a little bit some local people from an Air Force base, and there was an Air Force staff sergeant who was on board the Enterprise, and the other guy asked him, "Are you hungry?" He said, "Yeah, I'll have some chicken soup." But he was just kind of joking around, and he pushed the button, and there was the replicator making chicken soup for him. He goes, "Oh, this chicken soup!" He couldn't believe it, right? I could see us going in that direction, right?
Yeah,
especially with 3D printers. And in particular, what was interesting about this, and they talked about their obstacles, and the obstacles was production throughput. So in the time it takes to make one fillet, it takes 2 minutes. Actually, if you switch to hamburger patties, it takes 2 minutes to make a hamburger patty, plant-based, 3D printed though. But if you take the raw material from cows, you can do 130 patties in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I think that's a problem that can be overcome eventually with technology. And as far as driving down cost.
What do you see? Do you see people having the 3D printer in their home, getting I guess it's not a spool. I guess it would be some type of gel or something.
I think it's going to start first with companies that actually produce food.
Okay.
Whether it's from the raw materials or they add 3D as part of their service line. But I do see that eventually, I think people are going to have 3D printers at home. You plug in a program and you order basically the raw supply.
Right.
That you put into, and then you get that every month, and then and I could also see where the supply could be a different ingredients, but those ingredients, depending, like you have A, B, C, D ingredient, but a combination produces different kind of foods, right? So instead of one type of food, you can get like 10 different types of food if you have these 10 elemental ingredients.
Sure, like a cartridge almost for a printer.
Exactly. You've got red, yellow, and blue, and green. You got all these different colors. So I can see that happening at a home level, but I think it's definitely going to start at the commercial level first. But I just found it fascinating where this is all heading. The other company that I read about was an Israeli-based food company, Stakeholder Foods. They've unveiled 2 3D printers, and it was to address the overexploitation and the threat of extinction of eels. Eels is a $4.3 billion market. I had no idea.
Wow.
But the problem is that they're harvesting them to extinction. So they're looking for this alternative. And it turns out that they can produce by tonnage more eels in a month than you can by harvesting them in the wild. Right? So already you can see a benefit of that. And you don't want to put something to extinction. But I think this is fascinating. I love the idea of being able to print your own food, and also plant-based food, because we can grow plenty of plants. And those people who prefer not to, and everybody wants to know, and I read in the article too, they want to know the traceability of where their food comes from.
That's true.
Right.
Yes.
And sometimes, in the meat market, it's kind of hard, and the chicken and things like that. You hear a lot of weird stories about, treating animals, unhumanely and not in a very nice way.
Chicken farms.
Yeah. And then also the idea of trying to produce, bigger animals, bigger chickens through steroids and
a lot of antibiotics.
yeah,
steroids,
antibiotics,
yes.
some weird things, and that I'm not a big fan of at all. And so don't overcome nature. But if you can use plants to produce the same foods, same tasting, I can tell you that. And we're posting the picture. We just posted the picture of the salmon fillets. They look like real salmon fillets. I can see us, having sushi, plant-based sushi, which we love sushi.
Sounds great, yeah.
But that's where we're heading, I think, in manufacturing when it comes to 3D, not just making parts, but also manufacturing foods. And I think that's definitely cutting edge and something to be watchful of.
Foods in homes too.
That's right, foods in their homes as well. Well, now with that, let's before we transition to our second topic, we're going to try a little bit of this brew. I'm using my son's mug from the Big Red One here. Shout out to the diehards. Cheers.
Cheers.
See what this is like. Whoa. Did I say why we picked this one? Mm-hmm. Because we passivate steel, right?
Yes.
And so it's called the Steel Reserve. And it's 8.1% by volume.
High gravity.
Yeah,
yes.
High gravity, yes.
Ooh.
High gravity. I can taste it.
Right.
Yeah. It's definitely different. I like mine a little bit more hoppy, but this is still a good brew. So what's our other topic, Randy, we got going on?
So are you excited for the Olympics?
In Paris, coming up. Yes.
Summer Olympics.
Yes.
So what I found was they're going to be using AI to control crowds and control situations that are happening there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did this test at a Depeche Mode concert that they recently had there.
Yeah.
And I guess before I should explain how they tested this, I'll explain what they do.
Okay.
They actually take different scenarios.
Yeah.
And they'll get these scenarios, let's say crowd surges, heavy crowds, different objects. Let's say there's a weapon or even someone driving the wrong way on a street.
Okay.
The computer will see this, notice that it's incorrect, and then alert people, and then people will decide if this is a problem or not. So It could be a heavy crowd, but maybe there's a soccer match.
Right.
So that's not a big deal.
Right.
Or it could be something terrible.
Right.
If there's a fire, they can see that there may be a fire or some type of other disturbance, but then it brings it back to a human, so the human can make the decision.
Okay.
So there's actually 4 companies that have been working on this. So Viadex, Orange Business, Chaps Vision, and Wintex.
What kind of equipment are they using? Did they talk about that?
So
I'm assuming it's specialized equipment to integrate with AI then, right?
Well, it's all algorithms.
Okay.
So they this is what I envisioned. I don't know if this is exactly it. But so imagine that you have all these different scenarios where they're showing pictures of different things.
Right.
They're trying to teach the computer to realize what these are.
Now, so it's image recognition that they're using.
Right. It is image recognition, yes. Okay. But it's not facial recognition.
Right.
Which actually I was very happy to see. They can integrate all the facial recognition into it.
Right.
But they decided not to because of different laws, and then also it's still new.
Right.
So
well, I think it's interesting because
privacy too.
Yeah, it's evolving when it comes related to manufacturing, because that's what this program is about, the future impacts on manufacturing. Sony's developing something for manufacturing facilities that uses AI for image recognition of safety violations, OSHA violations.
So I was thinking about that, and then I was also thinking about, let's say, tooling,
right,
and other. If you're making parts, you have all these tools coming down, they break,
right,
they get old. So what if it took a picture each time,
right,
and then it said, all right, I know this tool's bad,
right?
That would be a simple solution.
Sure, of course.
But then yes, you could do OSHA.
Yeah, it actually
safety.
detects if somebody is not using PPE.
Correct.
And it's all done through algorithms that identify the behavior of an individual to determine, are they using a face mask, are they in a restricted area, let's say where there's acids and they're not using PPE. It identifies that and alerts through text messaging, through TV screens, and everything turns red to say there's a OSHA violation here or safety hazard here. And I think that's interesting, very much. So that technology they're using in the Olympics, Sony is developing something similar in the manufacturing world to help with safety compliance, OSHA compliance, but even looking for things that are not necessarily OSHA related. I mean, like you said, the tools wearing down, it's preventive maintenance is
Just say
being
there's a
used.
lot of clutter out
Yeah,
there. All of a sudden, there might be an alarm, which is not a big deal,
right.
but at least now you have someone who's looking at it,
Yeah.
and
No,
they
it's
don't have to run out to the floor
yeah.
every single
Yeah,
time.
because now, you're on the floor, you as the plant manager here, you go out there and you say, okay, you see something doing wrong. It'd be nice if we had equipment that can identify that for you automatically, right?
Correct.
And then
Because
send
I
you a
may be
text
in a
message.
different, yeah.
Yeah, they send you text messages and alert, and it's all about helping out and being preventive on ensuring that people are safe. And also from a quality perspective, it could identify other things. Things like heating or bad filtration or air volumes. I mean, there's a lot of intelligent software coming out there, and then a lot of it, especially with AI, can be proactively addressing the concern without waiting for a human to get involved.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's where I see all this AI going through when it's applicable to manufacturing. I think it's going to be a big plus for us in the future, but it's still in its infancy stage. It's still cutting edge.
So when do we decide to adopt?
Yes.
That's the thing.
And how far do we let AI go?
Right. So
controlling our lives.
oh, I'd love it to respond to my emails.
Yeah. Do we want it to become a Terminator? I don't know.
Yes.
So I think that's fascinating. Anything else on the topic? I think it was pretty cool.
So they did talk about the legal framework.
Yeah.
And because it's still in its infancy stage, that's why they didn't do facial recognition. But
the legal aspect, that's interesting.
But they actually put a law into place to allow this to happen for the games itself.
That's a good point. If we applied that in our manufacturing facility, we'd have to have the people sign when they on board saying they have to understand that they're being recorded and monitored and things like that, right?
But we'll just have a long NDA, EULA kind of thing.
Yeah.
No one reads that stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, get all that signed up. But I agree with you. I think that's interesting. There's a legal aspect here about people being recorded. That's a very valid point.
And that's exactly why they didn't do the facial recognition.
Okay.
Even though they can. And
yes.
They said a few more keystrokes.
Because of privacy and stuff, yeah.
Right. They could have put all that in there.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So then I started thinking, why wouldn't they put it for the most wanted people?
Yes.
At least have that recognition.
Well, I'm sure that's out there now.
But yeah, maybe so.
I have no doubt.
I guess they don't have to.
I have no doubt there's surveillance going on right now to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are two good, fascinating topics. We're going to transition now to a second half of our podcast. We're going to be talking to Roy Kersner. He's the CEO of Ultimate 3D Printing, and so it's going to be a very interesting discussion about where he sees the future of 3D printing going, and how that's going to impact manufacturing. So we're going to transition a little bit, and then we'll be right back. See you later. Welcome back to the MVP, and we have our guest here today, Roy Kersner. Roy Kersner is the CEO and founder of 3D Printing Store, founded in 2015, one of the first companies in the U.S. that made 3D printing available. And welcome, Roy, to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, one of the things I want to start first is telling the people a little bit about yourself and why do you think 3D printing is an important new industry that we're going to need?
Yeah, so my name's Roy Kersner. I'm the CEO of Ultimate 3D Printing Store and also Ultimate 3D Printing Services. So we have two sides of the business. One is the selling of products, and then the other one is servicing and in service bureau work, CAD design, product development, things of that nature. What we're seeing is the adoption of additive manufacturing. Most people don't realize 3D printing is additive manufacturing. So a lot of times you'll hear 3D printing, but it's the same word as additive manufacturing. It means building something from nothing. And there's typically very little waste when you look at additive manufacturing. So it's really good for the environment at that point in time. Now, tell us a little bit about why did you get into 3D printing? Got into 3D printing just probably just like anybody. I ended up seeing a 3D printer at a like a makerspace fab lab, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It was something that was growing from nothing, and I'll never forget the guy behind me. I'm standing there, and a guy taps me on the shoulder and he's like, "Hey, buddy, we're closing." And I had just watched this thing for like 3 hours print. And I said, "Well, it's not done yet." He said, "It's not going to get done till, in the middle of the night, but we're closing, man. You got to go." So it was, I left there and I really started studying and understanding the technology and just started, I bought a 3D printer, started tinkering with it, and really, really just fell in love with what the technology and where it's going to go in the future, and in how far it's going to go and how much it's going to change everybody's lives.
Well, that's a great segue to the next question I had is how do you see the future of 3D printing evolving? And what do you think the biggest impact in manufacturing is going to be?
Biggest gigantic impact in manufacturing, I believe, we're seeing it in prototyping, but additive manufacturing, 3D printing has gotten so good that you can actually create end user parts. So to break it down for anybody that's listening, if anybody out there has been to Home Depot or Lowe's, and when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, let's just say you go down the aisle that has all the pieces for like kitchen cabinets, little handles, different things like that. Those will not exist in the future. You're going to literally go online, pick that piece, and somebody in a room with a 3D printer is going to print it, and it's going to be printed on demand. So you're going to be looking at literally virtual warehousing of files and then printing on demand. So there's no excess inventory, there's no shipping. You're going to save an enormous amount of money, time, effort, and money, being able to store those digital files in print. So one of the things that they're looking at right now is like Ford, Volkswagen, any of the automakers. They have like they have all the CAD files for all the parts for all the cars, and typically a dealership would order the parts and have them stocked in their parts department. What we're looking at now is them connecting with service bureaus, like printing service bureaus that have 3D printers, and then when somebody needs a part, the file will go from the manufacturer like Ford, and it will be protected, but it would be printed out so that that file would be proprietary to Ford. It would be printed out for the Ford and the dealer, and then get it to the end user. So you're going to see that we're seeing a slow adoption of additive manufacturing, 3D printing, and I think it's a lot for manufacturers, it's a lot for individuals to wrap their head around, but the ones that are adopting it are saving an enormous amount of time and money. I mean, think of it this way. If you're a manufacturer and you're running a line that's running 24 hours a day, let's say 6 days a week, and something breaks on your line and it goes down, you can't manufacture, you have a part broken on the machine, you call up the manufacturer, and the manufacturer says, yeah, the part's $600, right, but we can't get it to you for 8 weeks. We can come in and we can take that broken part, either scan it or CAD it and reverse engineer it, and go ahead and make that part and get it to you a lot quicker than 8 weeks and get you back up and running. So that's some of the things that you're seeing.
Based on what you just said, Roy, just like Amazon has conquered the supply chain process because they're just fantastic. I can order something, get it tomorrow. I can envision 3D farms standing up where you just have warehouses of just nothing but 3D printers in the entire warehouse. There's somebody ordering something online. It goes into a queue. Some sort of ERP system then says who's the next 3D printer in line to print it. They read the CAD file and they print it for you and they ship it out the next day. I mean, I could actually see that kind of future setup where you've got, 20, 30, 50,000 square feet facilities with nothing but 3D printers and just a couple of people making sure the maintenance is okay.
Yep. So you'll see that, and then you'll see companies that really want to keep it in house that will hire companies like us to consult, to really help them with the adoption of 3D printing, additive manufacturing inside their facility,
Yeah.
and then they'll build their print farm. and they'll do it there. So you have both. You have half a dozen or another. Basically, it's going to be a pick. It's going to be an option in both ways for anybody, but definitely manufacturers.
Yeah, I've definitely, after reading some about it, 3D printing is not limited to a small part. I mean, you're building houses with concrete 3D printers, and it's just
Yep.
amazing to see that. And down to the smallest part.
Well, that brings me to my question. What type of materials are you using? So I'm
There we
curious.
go. I love that question because
Right.
what has happened in the last several years is you're talking about every polymer company, every chemical company in the world has gotten into additive manufacturing, 3D printing. And we have, just in one side of FDM 3D printing, we have over 300 materials from carbon fibers to nylons to flexible materials to hundreds and hundreds of different plastics. If you walked in and said, Roy, I need a piece that is submerged in gasoline every day. I need to make this piece. Can you make it? We have the material to do it. Roy, I need heat resistant. I need ESD, any type of material. And then that's not even counting going into titanium 3D printing, metal 3D printing, but I'm just talking about polymer based plastics. And you could print, there's carbon fiber filament that in some cases is able to replace like aerospace aluminum as the part. The strength is there.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize there was such a variety.
So you know the International Space Station has a 3D printer.
On board?
Yes,
I did not know that.
So if they need tools, they don't bring them with them because they don't have the room for it. They make it.
And that's a weight also constraint. They can make it there on the spot.
Well, not only that, you can make whatever you need.
Yeah,
So
that's fantastic. Yeah,
I thought that was
especially if you have a
interesting.
situation where you need a tool, you don't have to wait for the next launch.
It's gonna take forever, right?
Hey, so one last question there, Roy. Can you share a success story or a memorable project where your 3D printing technology made a significant difference to a customer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you're looking at, again, as, larger companies, basically, some of that is proprietary, what they're doing with it. But definitely when you talk about replacing parts that you cannot get, like supply chain damaged, literally replacing those parts and getting up and running, there's that's the key right there. And then again, low volume production. If you're manufacturing, this is what people don't realize. If you're manufacturing in the United States and it's typically less than 10,000 pieces, 10,000 pieces a year, you're going to save an incredible amount of money with doing in user 3D printing, additive manufacturing, because tooling costs, molding costs, all those types of things. You got to remember, you can create a file, print it, and now the printers are so good that it's actually an in user part that can be used. So a lot of times what we're seeing is, if I walk into a manufacturer that is basically doing less than even 1,000 parts a year, the amount of money they've spent on tooling and molding, there's no reason for it. You can absolutely create the part and use it as additive and save an enormous amount of time and money.
Roy, you made me think of one more question. Can you tell me the difficulty, knowledge-wise, of programming a 3D printer versus a CNC machine?
The difficulty now is it's not difficult at all. It's literally changed in the last, I would say 24, 18 months to really, depending on the machine that you're using, like FDM, if it's SLS or resin, there is some learning curves. You would need some training and things like that, just like CNC machines, in the adoption of additive in that way. But that's why you have companies like me. I mean, it's literally either showing you, and a lot of companies don't realize they'll get a 3D printer. So let's say, you guys got a 3D printer, started using it, and you're using it, but you're not staying in contact with us. You have to understand that the technology is evolving tremendously on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. So you want to stay in contact because there's new materials coming out. There's new technologies coming out. 3D Systems is one of the companies I work with. I went, what was it, last month? I went to a convention and they had a private showing of a new technology and additive that will be coming out in 2 years, and I almost fell out of my seat. And that is something that you got to remember. If you have the technology, if you're not paying attention to it, really understanding and staying in contact, that's the beauty. That's really where it comes down, is us communicating and having a relationship with you so that we always know where your business is at now, your short-term goals, your long-term goals, and be able to introduce more additive into your business to save you time and money.
Fantastic. Well, anything else, Randy? I think we've covered all the bases.
Well, I was just kind of curious. So I learned about metal sintering, and that's where they use powdered metal in order to form complex geometric things that you can't really do with a CNC machine. So now they have other materials that are, I guess, as strong. I guess my question is,
yes,
it's probably greatly improved since the last time I looked at it.
Yeah, so that's the other thing you just brought up is geometries that you cannot achieve off. There's several examples that we could show you of geometries that
incredible spiral thing that they did.
Yeah, because you see how CNC machines have evolved over the decades, right? And now they're doing 5-axis, right?
Oh,
but there was a time where they didn't have 5-axis, and then 4-axis, and so forth. So yeah, that's a good point, because that 3D machine can take all that into consideration and all these weird parts.
Yeah, so even with the 5-axis CNC machine, there is some geometries that you cannot achieve in subtractive manufacturing that you can achieve in additive. So there is definitely geometries that cross the chasm into additive, where that, just like you were talking about, that spiral, different things, no matter how much you want it to work on a CNC, there's no way even with the 5-axis to get some of the geometries that you can achieve there.
That's small, they could go.
Yeah. Roy, thanks a lot. I mean, really this fit well with MVP, and we're focused on the future. We're still in the adolescent stage, I think, of 3D printing.
Right.
But there's so much potential, and you let your imagination run wild.
So once
there's so much that we can do.
As long as you can use those materials.
Yes.
And then you have someone who can provide you with.
Well, the variation in materials, the variation in geometry, the potential of, from a supply chain perspective, ordering online, uploading, automation. I mean, there's just so much.
And that's really where you have started embracing Industry 4.0. I mean, even that I know we're talking about me a little bit, but you guys are on the cutting edge of automation and really, revamping what you're doing there. So you're staying on the cutting edge of having, like you said, the newest and the best technology when it comes to your business, and in adopting into AI and automation and things of that nature.
Roy, thanks a lot. We're going to go ahead and put up at the end of this interview Ultimate 3D Printing information. So if anybody wants to contact Roy or his company, you'll have that information not only at the end of the podcast, but also on the website. Roy, thanks a lot for joining us on our interview.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. I'd like to see the place sometime if I could.
Yeah, we got to visit, Roy.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Absolutely. And since we have two different businesses, kind of the sales and service side, we created a website that is for both, and that's www.u3dps.com. So, but thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it. Take care.
Well, I was really happy with the interview that we had with Roy. I thought it was very interesting. I like how it tied into your topic also.
It did. It really showed the potential, the future of manufacturing. We're still in the infancy stage of so much technology. Definitely. And things that are going to really help us big time. Mm-hmm. One other thing that we wanted before we close out is remind everybody, here at Veterans Metal, we support a nonprofit organization called Celebrate Birthdays. They support children who are foster children, make sure they all have a birthday to celebrate. They're celebrating their 5th anniversary coming up in May, so go to celebratebirthdays.org and join us in supporting their organization, a fantastic organization to support.
Definitely, and then also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Any questions, please feel free to put it in the comments. We'll definitely respond.
And a quick thank you to our producer, Christina.
Yes, Christina.
All right, we'll see you at episode 3. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.